Dr. Morsch, today you're analyzing 5 different lessons as represented in videos from the internet. Can you please summarize the 5th lesson for us?
Well, in this lesson, it's last, but it's certainly not the lowest LoTi level. In this particular lesson, which takes place in Auburn, Alabama, pre-K students are interacting with one another, with their surroundings, with their teachers, using technology ranging from planning a funeral for their pet praying mantis to planning a trip to Brazil, using technology, using higher order thinking. So this was a wonderful project to be able to evaluate.
Based on the HEAT rubric, how would you rate the higher order thinking represented by this learning experience?
Well, with these pre-K children, I thought the level of Bloom's taxonomy was at the highest level. I thought the students were operating at the synthesis evaluation level related to their exploration and also their planning of trips to Brazil, their planning of a funeral, their self-reflection related to their personal narratives. Very well done.
How would you rate the engaged learning criteria for this learning experience?
Again, I rated the engaged learning quite high. I rated it a 5 because I thought the students were basically in this situation were given opportunity to help define the problem as well as the process and the solution, especially as it related to the planning a funeral for their class pet praying mantis, as well as planning the trip to Brazil.
How would you rate the authentic connections represented by this lesson?
I thought this was the highest. I thought the authentic connections was at a 6 because the learning experience was directly relevant to students and involved them creating a product that has a purpose beyond the classroom that directly impacts them probably forever.
How would you rate the use of technology tools?
And again, what tells me that it's a high-level lesson is that we're really not even thinking about the technology tools. Even though several tools were used by the students involving the use of a video interactive whiteboard, but again, because the lesson was so relevant and so authentic, sometimes we lose track of what technology is being used. So as it relates to technology use, I scored it a 6. I thought the technology use was directly connected to task completion involving one or more applications, and I also thought the students had some input in terms of what technology to use to help them craft their solution. Again, in this case, planning the trip to Brazil and planning the funeral for their pet praying mantis.
Since the 4 HEAT components represent the student output of a lesson and the LoTi level represents the teacher input for a lesson, what would you say is the current LoTi level of this lesson?
At a minimum, I thought the LoTi level was a 5 because the students were applying their learning to a real-world situation. They were using technology at the higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy, and also it involved two-way collaboration, not only just with the students, but with the students' parents and with the faculty at that particular campus.
What would you need to know about this learning experience to determine if it was a 5 or a 6?
Well, in this particular case, it's hard to determine whether it was a 5 or a 6 because the difference between a 5 and 6 has to do with access to technology, which in this case it looked like they had access to whatever they needed, but again, it's difficult to determine when you're just watching a video.
So you would need to ask the teacher or the students questions in order to make that determination?
Absolutely, but keep in mind a 5 is absolutely fabulous, especially for what these students were doing, especially how the teachers were able to integrate all of the key concepts that are taught in literacy and mathematics and science and social studies towards the creation of interdisciplinary projects.
Thank you very much.